Recording started.
Yes, hi. My name is Tom Bruner, and I want to welcome you to Physical Science 210 presentation, live webinar presentation this evening on the topic of writing great discussion boards. And this particular webinar, live webinar, I'm the host, and my name's Tom Bruner, and I'm an adjunct instructor at Liberty University. And we're accepting question and answers for the live participants. And just want to welcome all of you and thank you for joining us tonight and being part of this live webinar event. All right, so about this live webinar, this is for students in Physical Science 210 who are in A and D terms or B terms, since this is for the recording as well. This is held live during the week of Discussion Board 1, the due date week of that assignment, which is week 4 in the D term. The webinar will cover written assignment discussion board basics, and then we'll discuss specifically discussion board 1, and then specifically discussion board 2, and then we'll wrap things up as a follow-up. So in the Physical Science 210 curriculum, there are 3 written assignments, and they're all somewhat formal. The most formal and the longest would be the comparative essay, but the 2 discussion board assignments are fairly formal written assignments because they require some research. College level writing, this is a 200 level course, and college level writing is something that you grow in and develop in throughout your undergraduate education, and it's something that pays dividends for a lifetime. Or from at least from most careers, most pursuits will require some formal writing and some excellent writing skills. And so sometimes maybe you feel like this when you're learning to write. Sometimes you feel like a turtle. It just is taking so long. It's so slow. It's not working correctly, and sometimes you get frustrated. But the best advice to writing is when all else fails, read the instructions, because there's quite a bit of detail in the instructions for the assignments, particularly in this course, that will direct you and guide you and lead you. And we'll refer to some of them throughout this presentation, especially the key ones that seem to be the ones that students miss and maybe need some more clarification on as well. So first, let's discuss the whole use of discussion board in online education. And the Q&A will be the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the discussion board forum. The discussion board forum, by definition, is an open, interactive writing forum provided for in Blackboard that permits 2 types of submissions, threads and replies. The key words here are open and interactive. It's open in that other students can read your post as well as the instructors. And in a normal written assignment, the instructor gets it and grades it and returns it to you, and it's between you and the instructor. But in an open discussion board format, the other students may also read what you have submitted. It is interactive in that what anyone in the course may have written, other students may reply to that thread, and then you may reply to a reply, and it can go on for quite a while. There's usually a time frame within which a discussion board is open, but that during that time period, it's unlimited in the amount of interaction that can take place. How do discussion board assignments differ from other written assignments? They not only require students to write on a particular topic, a thread, but they also require students to respond to a fellow student through the reply. So there's the thread, the topic initiation, and then the reply. The student's response to that, and that's to simulate to some degree what happens in a classroom where there's interaction between students and teacher, and that's what takes place to some degree in discussion board. Should I do the reply first or the thread first? Well, thread should be composed first, and the reason for that is because it gets your mind on the topic and thinking about some of the issues, and you're much more likely to contribute to somebody else's thread through your reply, having done a thread yourself. Number 4, can I submit my thread as a Word document? All discussion boards should be submitted as text in the text box provided in Blackboard. There's a text box or dialog box there. Now, if you prefer to compose in Word, you may certainly do so, just copy and paste, as opposed to submitting the paper as an attachment. So here's a thread that I initiated in the discussion board 1 assignment as a closing statement. But when I'm composing a thread, there's this little paperclip icon or attachment icon which allows you to attach the assignment. Well, not many students are going to read your submission if you attach it as a Word document. That means they have to click on the link, open it up, and then click out of it and then reply. And if you type in this text box, you're much more likely to get other students looking at your submission. In fact, one instructor indicated to me that he doesn't allow credit unless you put your content in the text box. So don't use the attachment function. Go ahead and put your content right there in the text box. And then it's got all these features that are available in Word, including spell check and alignment and different fonts and stuff like that. So you can do just about everything you need to do right there in the text box. The only advantage to Word is if you make a mistake or you suddenly go offline, then at least you've got a copy there. But if you do use Word, please copy and paste. Number 5, when are the due dates for discussion board threads and replies? All DB threads are due on Thursday, the week of the assignment. The replies are due on the following Monday. So this being Tuesday, the week of the assignment, it's due in 2 days. It's due on Thursday. And so the replies are always due the following Monday. And the purpose of this is to simply give a certain amount of time, a 3-day window, particularly over the weekend that's needed, to allow for your classmates to respond to your thread. And finally, what is the LU late policy regarding discussion board assignments? LU late policy does not allow credit for late DB threads or replies. So preventative medicine, if something urgent comes up, always communicate with your instructor prior to a due date to request an extension. This is very important with discussion boards since you may lose all your credit by not submitting on time. So a few more tips for successful discussion boards. Tip number 1, use APA formatting. This is actually one of the statements in the instructions. All posts must adhere to current APA format. Now, because it's the discussion board forum, we're not going to be able to use all APA formatting, but specifically APA refers to a standard in writing developed by the American Psychological Association, and it's one of several that are used at Liberty, including MLA, Turabian, and Chicago style. APA formatting is used often in science with science writing and science papers, but for this discussion board forum, we're not going to be requiring a specific page formatting, cover or title page, but we will require correct in-text citations. Tip number 2 for a successful discussion board, proofread your submissions. All posts must be grammatically, syntactically correct, and so you really need to take time to check for typos, check for misspellings, incorrect tenses, double words, and all the things that happen as a result of us just doing the normal thing we do of inputting data through a keyboard. So in the dialog box here, you will see that there is a spell check. So minimally check the spell check. Now we all know spell check doesn't catch everything. There are words that spell check won't correct that are the wrong tense. There won't correct plural or singular. So you need to proofread as well, but minimally check your spelling. Use that function. Tip number 3, remember to include a bibliography or reference section at the end of your thread, and that is, according to APA formatting, according to APA, the title of that should be reference or references if you have more than one source. Tip number 4, avoid using first person. This is somewhat of a formal assignment, even though we are using the fairly informal method of submission through the discussion board forum. Nevertheless, this is a research paper, and it's longer than probably most discussion boards at 350 words, and it requires citations. So the use of I and we should be avoided. There is an exception, which I'll discuss a little bit later on. Use of first person. Use of first person is something that you should maybe start to train yourself to not use in writing. One of the things that tends to happen when students use first person is you tend to go off on rabbit trails. You start discussing something in first person and I and my and me, and pretty soon you're off topic and you're down discussing something that happened a long time ago or something that you were thinking about. So it tends to get people off on rabbit trails. It tends to be a vehicle by which people start sharing personal comments and experiences, which may or may not be appropriate for the particular assignment, and in this case, probably not, although there might be one section where it's permitted. And then thirdly, it prevents students from mapping their actions, which is a phrase I use to describe the process that students start using the paper to write about what they're going to do in the paper. Well, in Section 2, I'll discuss this. In Section 3, I'll discuss this. So those if you don't use first person, you're less likely to make these kinds of errors and mistakes in composing papers. So here's an example of a paper that a student submitted, and this particular student wrote in this paragraph, this first paragraph here, did the author write with concision and precision? I have to say no, because I was not at all engaged in this article. It is an informative piece in my own interpretation, but my attention was not captured at all with this information. So I would have to give my honest opinion, which is still no. So we have here in these sentences, we have I, we have my, we have I, my, and so we have 6 uses of first person here. And then again here in the second paragraph, continued use of it. And this section would be so much better without first person. And finally, 2 more tips. Tip 5, use correct in-text citations. Here's an example. Let's say you're writing and you want to quote the article that you've chosen to write about. And so to quote the article, you make a statement something like this. The author makes an assumption when he states, comma, quotation mark. And then you include the quote, and then you end the quote. Now, the correct citation in APA formatting is to include the author and the year. Following, you may include paragraph number or page number if there's a page or paragraph number as well, but minimally author and year. Now, if there's no date, you can use the N.D. format, N period D period, to indicate no date. And then also tips for tip number 6, avoid plagiarism. And I don't need to say too much about this because we're familiar with what plagiarism is. It's presenting material that is not in your own words. So you need to, these are admonitions, present material that is in your own words and cite sources that you are using, paraphrasing, or borrowing the idea from. So these are the positive things that you do to avoid this negative outcome of plagiarism. And then some miscellaneous things to avoid: not indenting the first line of a paragraph. I think that the email culture has led us to almost forget how to write a paragraph, which requires a 3 to 5 space indent on the first line, first sentence of each paragraph. So always indent the first line of a paragraph, especially in formal writing. And then avoid use of contractions: shouldn't, couldn't, won't, I'd, wouldn't, etc. So use full words and not contractions in formal writing. That's an APA standard. And then dramatic or strong language, and what's related to that is hyperbole, exaggeration. So sometimes you want to make your point, you find a really strong verb, but it's a little bit too strong for formal writing. And you want to be a little bit more cognitive in your approach to making an argument or persuasion. And then finally, rhetorical questions, questions that have only one answer, like, how could they think this is even possible? That would be a rhetorical question. And then finally, in green type here, typos. And typos are a function of our use of keyboards to input information. And there can be not mental slips, but physical slips and things that the eye doesn't catch when we're typing. So you really need to do spell check and proofread to make sure you catch typos. All right, discussion board form 1. Let's jump right into this week's assignment. The assignment is requiring you to choose one earth science article 5 years or younger from the websites, and then write a 350-word thread on that article. Now, in the assignment folder for week 4 in D term, you will see that there is a presentation here, how to find articles for the earth science in action. This is an excellent presentation, and I won't be redundant tonight in going over these same items that are covered by our course developer, Professor Mark Tinsley, in this really good presentation. So watch that before you do anything else towards completing this assignment. If you have not yet watched that yet, watch that presentation. Then you can go to one of these websites and start looking for articles. But first you need to find view this. It's a very short presentation, and that'll clue you in on what to do next. Then you'll choose a topic. Now, make sure your topic is an earth science topic. A couple of instructors gave me feedback, and I noticed last term also that students were writing on topics that were not earth science topics, but were in those earth science websites. So if you pick a topic, make sure that the topic you're choosing is an earth science topic. And by now in the course, we've covered enough geology that you should know what a topic about plate tectonics or volcanoes or glaciation or seafloor spreading, what those topics, that those are related to geology. So here's an example of a non-earth science article that's actually in one of those websites or found in one of those websites. How a devastating forest fire revealed a tree as close to fireproof as a tree can get. Now, of course, there's maybe a little bit of earth science in here, but it's more about the biology of a tree than is anything else. So stay away from that kind of topic. And then here's another one. Death toll reaches 18 in Utah flash floods. Well, the reason why that found its way into one of the geology websites is because of the flash floods and mud flows and mass wasting, and some other geologic processes that were taking place there that produce sediments. But this is really a human interest story. This isn't a geology story per se, geology article. All right, so how are you going to structure or organize your thread? There should be 4 paragraphs, and this is straight from the instructions for the assignment. There should be an introductory paragraph, and then secondly, a paragraph discussing the article. Third paragraph should be discussing your interest in the article, and then a concluding paragraph. Introductory paragraph, from the instructions, you should include the title of the article, the web address, the authors, and briefly state the topic covered, and do something here to capture your reader's attention. So you want something that's going to keep them engaged in your thread. Think about it. There could be a lot of students that read your thread. All right, here's an example of an introductory sentence that I want to share with you and get you to think about. I picked the world's longest continental volcano chain in Australia. I found this article at ScienceDaily.com and so forth. This article was written by D.R. Davies, N. Rawlinson, G. Lafodano, and I.H. Campbell. This article tells us about the discovery that Australia has volcanoes and the longest in the world. Okay, so this is This is a student that chose an article, and he's describing the article, and it looks like he's got most of the components for the introduction, the introductory paragraph here, but let's take a closer look. Notice it starts with I, first person. So that would be something that I would notice that I wouldn't want to see in an introductory article. And then you notice that this is capitalized here, and it shouldn't be capitalized. It's not a proper noun. And then we have I again here, use of first person. And then we have the misspelling of discovery, or just the omission of the Y at the end of discovery. So this should be discovery. And then we have longest in the world, and of course the question is longest what? And the longest volcanic chain, the longest string of volcanoes, the longest what? It's not clear. So this particular example includes the article title, the web address, and the authors, and it does state the topic covered pretty well, not great, but it doesn't really capture the reader's attention, and of course it has some grammatical spelling errors as well. Here's another example. Growing up in California, I've always been interested in the land movement along the coastline in the Golden State. An article titled California Rising on the website ScienceDaily.com addresses that very issue, obtained from studies done by the University of California, Santa Barbara. This article challenges the previously accepted rate of uplift along the western coast of the United States. Okay, so this looks pretty good, doesn't it? Except that it begins in the first sentence with first person. And then secondly down here, says this article challenges the previously accepted rate of uplift. There's nothing wrong with this sentence, but I'm wondering in what way does it challenge it? So if you told me in what way it challenges it, like it was uplifting faster, or was it uplifting slower, or was it uplifting in a different way, I might have been more encouraged to read on. So let's look at paragraph 2 and some examples from students that have written the paragraph 2. So in this paragraph, we want, specifically from the directions, we want from the instructions for the assignment, we want new information. We want to know what's this new information. These are articles 5 years or younger. What's the new information from these articles? Why is this information important? And how is this information going to impact mankind or the earth or science? In other words, will this information make a difference? So when we're discussing these three things or looking for these three components in this paragraph, new information, the importance of the information, and the impact of the information, we're really asking you to summarize, analyze, and then imply or apply or forecast the information into the future. Here's an example. For examination from, and then an author and his colleagues is included here. And then there's a long statement here in quotes. And this statement has to do with fracking. Fracking is a short name for hydraulic fracturing, which is the latest and greatest method, a fairly new innovation in obtaining natural gas and oil from shale, which was unattainable or at least economically unattainable in the past. So this article is about the pros and cons of fracking, and so the statement here begins with further, this sentence, sentence 2, begins with further examination from, and then the author and his colleagues note they're fracking. And so this article is discussing some other author, and then previously no one addressed how colloids and then small pieces of mineral clay and other particles have been linked to groundwater contamination. And then there's another quotation down here. So there's quite a bit of information presented here, but let's look at what might be different about it, what could be different about it. First of all, it begins with this phrase here, further examination, and then a quote. You probably shouldn't begin an opening sentence in a paragraph with a quote unless it's really clear what's being discussed. And it's not really here. So quotes need a setup sentence. They need an introductory sentence of some kind to get you tracking with what the thought is that's coming in the quote. And then So, yeah, there's a lot of new information included here. There's some even explanation of why it's important and how this information will impact mankind or science. The fracking water is not good, especially in the form of backflow. Okay, but look at this. Most of this paragraph is a quotation. At least half of it is a quotation. So this is what I would say is an overuse of quotes. It means that the student isn't writing in his own words. He doesn't really have an understanding, so there's an over-reliance on quotes. And unless you're really, really good at stringing thoughts together and the quotes lend themselves to that, it's not a good idea. I think you can make much more sense as a student writing in your own words, summarizing. You can still use these citations at the end with summary statements, but and you can string thoughts and ideas together and come to conclusions and lead your reader into your logic and your reasoning and your understanding much better if you're writing in your own words. Here's another student that's writing about the Yellowstone supervolcano, which is the Yellowstone National Park, and some of the hot springs there sits on top of a large magma chamber. So in this statement, it says the Yellowstone supervolcano rests atop a large magma chamber. This magma chamber is about 2,500 cubic miles in volume. Until recently, there was a mystery as to how the magma chamber was filled with magma. A newly discovered reservoir below the magma chamber is about 11,200 cubic miles in volume. Instead of liquid magma filling this reservoir, hot and partly molten rock fills it. So I won't read the rest, but I want to go ahead and look at some of the things that I've put in red here to kind of look to see if this is a good second paragraph. This is a really good sentence here, this sentence in green. A newly discovered reservoir below magma chamber is about 11,200. So that's new information. Instead of liquid magma filling it, hot and partly molten rock fills it. The magma reservoir sits between 12 miles deep and 28 miles deep between the upper crust and upper mantle. This would fulfill the requirement to summarize the article. Now, this next sentence here that I've highlighted in green, this is an important discovery because it solves how the magma chamber is connected. So what are we doing here? What's the student doing here? They're saying why this information is important, how the magma chamber is connected to the mantle, and how the magma chamber gets its magma. So this is a good analysis of the article here, this statement. And then the paragraph ends with, it also helps us to know how the volcano works. And despite the use of first person here, twice, us and we, there's a really good point made here, and that is that there's an implication or application or forecast in the future. In other words, what can we do with this information that will help? And that would be their ability to forecast into the future of potential eruption. All right, so discussion board 3, paragraph 3, you're being asked to discuss a reason for your interest in the article. Now, in this section, this third paragraph, first person would be allowed because you're responding personally in some cases to the question. You may want to include worldview here. That might be part of your answer. That might explain part of your interest. There may be something in your career that has caught your interest, or something personally that has caught your interest, or something about the geography of it, or the timing of it that caught your interest. Or there might be a concern about the future. You might be concerned about a region or a city or a country or your own family or your own neighborhood or yourself. And so that would be something that might be appropriate to use and state in this particular chapter, in this particular paragraph. So here's another example. I found this article interesting because I really think that the planet we live on is something I would love to study more than I do. And I really have an interest in causes of natural disasters like earthquakes. I'm really glad that I picked this article because I enjoyed it. I hope its work helps all of mankind. All right, do you think this is a good third paragraph here? So notice in red the occurrence of first person here. I found, I really, I do, I. So there's 3 sentences here, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 uses of I, first person here. which I would say, though first person is allowed here, it's an overuse of it. I really think that the planet we live on, look at really and really and really here, and I would have to really say, no pun intended, that really should not be included in a formal written assignment. There's just probably no place that it would fit well. So it's filler. And then finally, I hope its work helps all of mankind. So the I hope there is something that is not very objective. It's pretty subjective. And so you want to be a little more definitive to say, this will help mankind or this won't help mankind, as opposed to saying, I hope its work helps mankind. Okay, let's move on. Paragraph discussing your interest in the article. Was first person allowed? Yes, but was it used correctly? No. Was worldview included? No. Was personal interest included? Yeah, that was about the biggest part of it. Was there a concern about the future? Yeah, there was. So we could probably give them some positives for that in that particular paragraph. Here's another example of a reason, the third paragraph, a reason for choosing an article. Now this student is writing about the magma chamber underneath Yellowstone. And so it's stated here, being born in Wyoming in 1961, but having never been to the park, Yellowstone Park, I am as curious about the park and all its beauty. It is a part of my heritage and place of my birth that is on my bucket list. Just the fact that it is a living volcano within the continent makes it fascinating and one of God's marvels worth exploring or visiting. With this new discovery, it adds to the wonderment of God's creation and how it impacts both views of creation. Do you think this is a good paragraph? Well, it includes some of the components we're looking for, but there's a misuse here of the term, of the word as. So I am as curious about the park and all its beauty. As curious as what? So as should be left out. And this is a good statement. That bucket list is a little bit too informal, a little bit too casual of a term. You want to avoid using idioms and slang terms in formal writing. But nevertheless, the student does explain quite well their personal interest in this thing, and then makes a statement here about God's marvels and God's creation, which ties in with the student's worldview, and that is probably an appropriate addition here to include in their interest or the reason for the article. Okay, paragraph 4, the concluding paragraph, which is a restatement of the key findings in the article and its implications. And this should be high impact. You should end with a bang and not with a whimper. So oftentimes students get to the conclusion, they make a few general statements, and that's it. But a concluding paragraph really has the potential to tie things together and leave your reader on a positive note with what you've written. So here's an example of a concluding paragraph that one student wrote. This article, California Rising, is evidence that there is still a lot to discover on this amazing planet. Learning about all the different types, natural occurrences that happen all around the world is a reminder of how great God is. Although we as humans may never be able to fully understand how everything works, we do know that He's in control. In His hands are the depths of the earth. The heights of the mountains are His also. The sea is His, for He made it, and His hands formed the dry land. So the student is writing about the interface between land and sea, and they find a scripture that discusses both from God's perspectives, and that He is the creator, and that He is the one that formed it, and that He actually owns this creation. So I feel that in terms of making an impact at the end of the paper, the student did quite well with the use of Psalm 95 here. So high impact, yes. A restatement of key findings and implications, not really. It wasn't very good summary statement, but it did end with that probably impactful statement with the use of scripture there. All right, so you're finished your DB thread, you've submitted it, and students start reading it, and then you start hunting around for somebody else's thread to reply to. The DB1 thread content replies is 25% of the DB grade. Now, I said replies plural here because 2 replies are required for this assignment. And it may be your experience in another course that only 1 reply was required, and you got full credit for that. But in this particular assignment, 2 replies are required. So don't lose a full grade or more just because you missed replying to one of your fellow students. 2 replies need to be submitted by Monday. Discussion board form 2, choose a current earth science topic. Because we're going to skip from week 4 now to week 8, and for those of you in 8 term listening in, you'll have a chance to get in on this discussion board form 2. Choose a current earth science hot topic. What is a current earth science hot topic? This is the discussion board form 2 assignment, which is in week 8. All right, so this assignment is significantly different. These 2 are not the same, discussion board 1 and 2. They're not mirror images, they're not carbon copies, they're different. And this one requires probably a little bit more work than the first one, and we'll explain why. But first, in discussion board 2, you will choose one of these hot topics in earth science, anthropogenic global warming, man-made, in other words, man-made global warming, water pollution, air pollution, groundwater pollution, fracking, which we discussed a little bit ago, and surface erosion, ultraviolet radiation, supervolcanoes, the potential for eruption, increased hurricane tornado activity in the 20th, 21st centuries, river piracy. All right, so these are the 10 topics that you have to choose from. Choose one. Don't go from one to another. Don't include 2 topics in your discussion. Keep it to 1 topic. So finding 2 journal articles. These articles need to be 10 years old or younger that address your hot topics. So after you've picked one of these topics, then you want to find the articles that address the topic or speak to the topic or are authoritative on the topic that you've chosen. Now, where are you going to find articles? The best and easiest and most thorough place to start is probably not Google, but it's probably the Jerry Falwell Library website on Liberty's web page, on Liberty's website. And so the specific, you can use keyword to find it, but the specific web address is right here. And then once you're in that library main page, then there'll be 4 tabs, and you'll pick the research tab. And then under that, you want to pick research guides. And there's a lot of research guides available by subject, and so you want to select biology and chemistry. And then after you selected biology and chemistry, there's a tab at the end called Specific or Additional Resources tab, and that tab will give you 2 choices, and you want to select Earth Science. Once you've done that, guess what? You have gone to the Earth Science web page on the Jerry Falwell Library website, and it looks like this. So there you go, Library, Research Guides, Biology, Chemistry. And this Specific Additional Resources tab here at the end is where you select Earth Science, and you know you're at the Earth Science page when you see Earth Science over here on the left. So this is a great starting point for your discussion board 2 assignment and looking for 2 articles that speak to a geology or earth science hot topic. All right, so you'll do your search, put your search word in up here, and you can look for books, you can look for journal articles, you can look for any number of things that are needed to discuss your hot topic, but specifically you need 2 journal articles. All right, after you've picked your topic and found your 2 sources and read about the issue, no matter what it is, ultraviolet radiation, fracking, whatever, then you need to take a position. And so this requires you to be informed enough to be able to say something to defend that position. But in this position, the position that you want to take is one of 2. one of the two positions you want to take, is this hot topic a problem for the Earth and or mankind, or is it not? Is it a problem, or is it not a problem? Then you want to defend your position, and that's why it's important that you read and research and find evidences, and uncovering the material you research, you will need to find two well-researched evidences for the position that you take that either support the view that it is a problem or you support the view that it is not a problem. So let's say you choose fracking, and you say fracking is a problem, it's a big problem. And you need to find two well-researched evidences that say fracking is a big problem. Excuse me. And then, or you may say that it's not a problem. You may say fracking is not a problem, and so you need to find two well-researched pieces of evidence to support that position as well. If it is a problem, then guess what? Your next task is to solve the problem. So you've given your two evidences, you've identified the problem, now provide at least two possible well-researched solutions. As opposed to saying government has something to do something, I look for some creativity in this part of the response from students. And I look for you to consider the following. Is personal responsibility part of the solution? Is education part of the solution? Are there scientific solutions to the problem? And then lastly, is government intervention a part of the solution if needed? Is that part of the solution to the problem? So don't just, normally we resort to, well, they would be government. Government needs to do something here. But maybe there's some other things. Maybe there are some other institutions that are non-governmental. Maybe there are some scientific solutions, educational solutions to the problem, and certainly personal responsibility. If it's not a problem, then the assignment directs you to explain how the other side's fears and concerns might be addressed by scientists or government officials. So you want to find out how to respond if you don't think it's a problem. You want to find out how to respond to those who think it is a problem, and you want to be able to allay their fears and concerns. All right, the DB thread was organized also in 4 paragraphs, again similar to the first discussion board thread. Introductory sentences, discussion of a hot topic. Is it a problem for the Earth or mankind or not? Discussion of possible solutions or possible ways to reach out to those of the opposing side. And then finally, a concluding sentence. All right, here's an introductory paragraph for discussion board 2 example. Let me see what you think. Okay, this student has written, ultraviolet radiation, UV exposure, is not only a hot topic affecting the Earth, but for mankind as well. As a teenager/young adult, I was not careful with sun/UV exposure. As an adult, this has caused many issues for my health. Is this a good introductory paragraph? Well, let's look at what I've highlighted in red. The first thing I would notice is that the student is using slashes to abbreviate here, and instead of using language like and or just using one of the other terms. I think this is too informal. It's not appropriate here, and I would say that that also I would note that careful here is misspelled, and these are just little things, but they speak to your attention to detail and your ability to present professionally. Thread content, paragraph number 2. So let's look at an example of the second paragraph. Discuss the problem or the non-problem. In other words, if they say someone says it's a problem, then you need to explain why it's not a problem. Include 2 well-researched evidences for the position you take. So in this case, we have a paragraph 2 example where the student is writing about ultraviolet radiation and the ozone layer. All right, so in this example, the student is writing and saying ozone O3 absorbs ultraviolet radiation from the sun. It protects living organisms from the UV radiation. Recently, there has been a depletion of the protective layer that is over the Earth's polar regions, or the ozone hole. Connection between the ozone hole and global warming, ND as the citation. As the ozone layer is depleted, this decreases the atmosphere's protection for us from the sun and its ultraviolet UV radiation. The Earth's atmosphere blocks 98.7% of the sun's UV radiation from penetrating through the atmosphere. The 2.3% that gets through has both positive and negative effects, end of quote. All right, won't read the rest, but let's look at this from my perspective. Let's look at it first from the paragraph from grammar, syntax, punctuation, and spelling, all right? So first thing I notice is that 03 here, 3 is not subscripted, and it should be. If you're able to do it in Blackboard, do so. There's a comma here, but a comma doesn't belong there. A semicolon does, or a period in the beginning of a new sentence. And then here, Earth's polar regions, unless this is the title, this should not be capitalized. And ozone hole really shouldn't be in quotation marks because it's commonly used. And then first person is used here, and it's is misused here in the wrong form. Then we have here 98.7%, 2.3%. So those two don't add up to 100, they add up to 101. So one of these is incorrect. And then the incorrect verb here has both positive. It says of the 2.3% that gets through has both positive and negative effects. So of should be deleted. The 2.3% that gets through has both positive and negative effects. Negative, since it's part of the title here, should be capitalized. And then UVR triggers vitamin D. There's something incorrect here, wrong word here. And then there should be a colon down, should not be a colon down here either. Damages immune the system. That's something wrong there. Damages the immune system, so immune and the are reversed. So there's lots of little things here that are in error. But what I do want to point out here is I want to ask, did the student discuss the problem or the non-problem? And I would say they did. I would say that they fairly well explained that there was an ozone layer and that it has been depleted. Now, did they do a good job explaining the problem? There could have been a lot more detail here. It says recently. Well, how recently? Be specific when you use statements like this. Recently. How recently? There's been a depletion of the protective layer that is over the Earth's polar regions. As the ozone layer is depleted, this decreases the atmosphere's protection for us from the sun. Despite the use of first person here, this is a good statement, but it doesn't quantify anything. How much has been depleted? How much is decreased? And these holes here, they're over the polar zones where hardly anybody lives. Is that really affecting people? The Earth's atmosphere blocks this, okay, and 2.3 gets through, but you're saying that there's some positive results of that. So are we saying that the hole is making things better or worse? Are there some more positive effects? Or are there some other? So this isn't really entirely making the case. It's sharing some good information, but it's not as specific and detailed as it could be, and it's not making a really strong case here. The paragraph 2 content discusses the problem and non-problem fairly well, but not as well as it could. And then include 2 well-researched evidences. Well, are these well-researched evidences? Recently, there's been a depletion. So it's not strong evidence there. How much of a depletion? How recently? And so on. So no, I didn't fulfill this really well. Okay, paragraph 3, let's move on. Provide at least 2 possible well-researched solutions. Now we're going from evidences to solutions. As opposed to saying the government has something to do with it, consider the following. Let's look at an example. There are several solutions to the problem people are facing with UV exposure. Limit time in the midday sun. So here's the person who's gone from explaining the problem in the previous section we looked at. Now they're talking about solutions. Limit time in the midday sun. Some people are unable to do this due to their jobs. If so, wear sunscreen. Know the UV index for the day. News channels and newspapers need to make this more prevalent in their reporting. Education is key. Education is always an important aspect of any problem and solution. Continuing research and educating all involved, teachers, doctors, scientists, etc. There needs to be support and encouragement from government officials for research on health effects and protective measures. Now, despite grammatical errors in this sentence, in this paragraph does a great job of spreading around the solutions to include personal responsibility, education, scientific solutions, and government interventions. So there's a lot of creativity here. There just isn't a lot of preciseness in grammar and syntax. Let's look at a concluding. This is the same paper in the student writing. In conclusion, there are so many things that can be done to help reduce our health risks. Further research and support is needed to help make strides to help reduce these risks. These two sentences could apply to a large number of problems. In this paragraph, you want to tie in your topic and state it specifically here and make some kind of zinger statement at the end. But this is kind of a whimper of a conclusion, and it just doesn't tie it together and really push you in the direction of being convinced of what they've stated and said in the other parts of the thread. So an overview of this whole paper on UV radiation, which we haven't looked at other examples. We just looked at one paper here, one thread here. The negatives are that there was weak evidence establishing the problem. There were some spelling and grammatical errors. There was a minimal conclusion. And guess what? The word count was only 315. So that obviously is a problem because the assignment directive requirement is 350 word minimum. So the student came up short. Either they weren't counting or they ran out of time or something happened here. And so obviously you're going to lose points if you come in below 350 words. The positives of this paper was there were some really good introductory comments, correctly cited sources, comprehensive solutions, and a good reference section. I didn't show you that because it wouldn't look right formatting in PowerPoint, but the reference section was quite good. And they used three or four sources as opposed to just the two required. So just to wrap up our discussion this evening, some reminders. Choose an earth science topic for discussion board 1. Don't choose a biology topic. Don't choose a topic that's just kind of a human interest story. Choose an earth science topic, something related to something you've learned in the course so far. Secondly, the thread is due Thursday evening, this Thursday evening for D-term students, Thursday evening the 19th. And then the two replies are due Monday evening. And then view the discussion board 1 grading rubric. One instructor wrote to me and said, I wish my students would view the grading rubric for this assignment. And then the last one there, avoid first person, contractions, slang, and hyperbole. Those are all less formal uses of English writing. So use formal, eliminate contractions, first person, slang, hyperbole, and then you'll be more convincing in the way you write, especially in these kinds of assignments. As a follow-up and other resources, I mentioned earlier, please consider using Liberty's Online Writing Center. There's probably not much time this week to use it for this assignment, but you may want to consider using it, especially if you've had trouble with written assignments. Then consider using Liberty's Online Writing Center as a way to get a tutor-reviewed. This is a free service for Liberty Online students. You get a tutor-reviewed assessment of a paper before you submit it to your instructor for grading. So you go onto their website and you fill out the form to submit. You tell them you want it graded according to APA formatting. That's one of the choices in there. And then you submit it, you upload it, and then they send you an email when it's ready. You download it, and you can view all their comments and make all the adjustments and then submit a better paper. That's Liberty's OWC Online Writing Center. And then also practice looking for resources at the JFL website. See if you can find that Earth Science page and then start looking for articles if you haven't started on your discussion board 1 assignment yet. And there will be a recording of this made available following finish of a recording tonight. And I want to leave you with this scripture from Proverbs 14:23 from the New International Version. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. I know many of you work hard at school and your academics, and you work hard on your job, and you work hard as parents, and you work hard in ministry. And God has a promise for you. All hard work brings a profit. I think sometimes we're just looking for alleviation from hard work, but actually there's a blessing in it. And no one is suggesting overworking and overdoing it, stressing ourselves out. But God does promise to bless hard work. And so I just speak that over each of you tonight, and as you listen to this recording, that God promises to bless your work and to prosper you in it. So I leave you with that, signing off now, and we just want to say God bless you and look forward to being part of your academic future here at Liberty. God bless.